We are a small, very focused research institution who has been on the coast of Maine for 120 years. We are working with model organisms to understand the mechanisms of disease. These animals have found different solutions for different problems. And the axolotl are the world champions in healing almost every injury without scarring. Every child knows that when you have a salamander and the tail goes, you regrow the tail. Now they do this with all the organs. You can take away half of the brain and the brain regrows. Perhaps we can learn from that and we can transfer this back to our wound healing and to our regeneration. The zebrafish and the African turquoise killifish, their kidneys look like yours and mine under the microscope. We can use these model systems directly to look into that. So a lot of the principles we all internationally understand about the kidney actually came from the MDI Biolab over the last 100 years. One of the miracles here is that from the outside, we look like Maine, and we want to keep it like that. Like the NIH said, we consider you to be a national treasure the way you look like, but inside, it has to be very modern. The research we're doing here has to be very advanced. We are able, and have been able for a long time, to attract this international crowd. And this makes it then possible for us to train Mainers, young people. They are not only becoming experts in their field, but they're also exposed to an international community.
MDI Biolab really values training and mentorship because it's how we can grow a scientific enterprise in the state. So it's really instrumental to our mission that we have a whole scope of training, going from K through 12 and getting those kids interested in science and hopefully getting some of them thinking about becoming a scientist, but then also providing opportunities for our undergraduates, for graduate students, and for postdocs to come here and to train. And then hopefully they'll fall in love with the state too and decide to stay.
It's wonderful to have a community of young people here. They provide us with new ideas. We provide them with more experience. The mix of beautiful campus, young, enthusiastic people, and the possibility to advance our understanding of the world. It's this special place.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to share with you, Dr. Haller, and everything that is happening at the MDI Biological Lab. This is going to be a masterclass in science and leadership. So get ready. So good morning.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to share. And we have already seen everything. The only thing which is not correct, I'm not wearing a tie when I'm on campus normally, but I did it for the occasion.
So we need to talk about the BandAid. Let's just get it right out there. And I do want to say that normally when we work with our Like a Boss guests, we're like 1 minute maximum on your video. But when we saw this video, we're like, this explains so much because it's really hard to boil down all the things that happen up on MDI. But honestly, what's up with the BandAid?
Yeah, well, I try to be very brief. So I still have a research group in Germany from my old days when I was director in Hanover. So I go back and forth now and then, which is good for MDI-BL and for our international collaboration. So I'm working then from Hanover. So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm on a Zoom conference with the lab. And somebody has to step out and I have 5 minutes and I thought, well, I could use these 5 minutes. And I go into the garage and try to store an old bike, which was totally useless. I could have thrown it away. I tried to put it up there because I have 5 minutes. And then I turn around and it's a bit unstable and then it comes down and it crashes on my head. And then it scalps me actually and it's bleeding like hell. So I run back to the Zoom conference with a towel there and people at MDI-BL freak out, because this is arterial bleeding, so call an ambulance, call a doctor. So they try to call people in Hanover, they know, because we have collaborations to send them to my home or to the university. It all went well. My wife came back and took me to the hospital, and I got stitches and all that. And the BandAid is the last of that, and the scar will be there. One of our young people said, looking at the scar, I'd like to have something like that. So.
I mean, it is kind of badass. So anyway, a very unique biking accident, but I also think it demonstrates how you try to utilize every moment of time to do something productive. So before we hit the Wayback Machine and talk about your path to Maine, just kind of give us an overview of MDI Biological Lab.
Well, you have seen the natural beauty. We have been a lab, a scientific institution for more than 125 years. First at Harpswell, and then we were invited. We moved to MDI in 1921 when the park was built, because at that time, a national park was not only about natural beauty, but also the combination of culture and science. So we are in the best tradition of the 19th century that you have to combine these things, and this is why they wanted to have MDI Biolab on the island, and we have started to work from there. We have developed, first we did organisms from the sea. We were in the footsteps of Charles Darwin, trying to find out how animals and how life developed. And now we're using animal models, still associated with water. We use these animal models to understand mechanisms of disease, mechanism of physiology, and then translate this.
So, and we're going to talk more about the zebrafish and other models that you use. So, let us chart your path to Maine. So, you grew up in Germany, and any memories or experiences as a child that you'd like to share?
Well, that's a difficult question. I grew up in southern Germany, so it's hilly, it's wine-growing country. Big family, farmers, and so I'm the first MD in the family, and so I went to school in Stuttgart, where Mercedes comes from, and Porsche, and one of the memories, has to do with biking. So I was the oldest son, a very loving mother, and she encouraged me to go shopping at the age of 6 downtown, and I was very proud of that. But then I took my bike, I think it must have been 7 or so, and I biked out into the countryside, and this is a very lovely memory, but I had a hard time when I came back because I was gone for 4 hours or so, and they thought that I had disappeared. But this going out and crossing boundaries, that's a memory I like.
And it seems like a theme that has continued for sure. When did you first realize that you wanted to become a scientist or a doctor? How did that play out?
Well, in Germany, we go from high school directly to university. When I was growing up, you still had to go to the army. So I spent 18 months in the army before I went to university, and then I had to find my way. We don't have a college system like the US where you can find out what you actually want to do. So I did philosophy, I studied laws, because you can do this in Germany because it's free. So you don't have to pay for that. So I took my own college education. I did art history very seriously, and then I became a medical doctor after 3 years at university.
And tell us, just as Jim mentioned, if we talked about your path here and all your accomplishments, we would hit the 9 o'clock hour, but kind of, sum it up to getting to Maine.
Okay.
I hope that's not it. I hope
So
that's not offensive.
I studied in Berlin. At that time, it was still West Berlin. This was before reunification. I studied for a while in England, first in London, and then in Wales, and then I came back. And then I started as a fellow and young doctor in Berlin, Free University of Berlin. And after reunification, I was asked, and this was my first senior job, the German government wanted to build a German NIH in East Germany, so I was part of the team, which was very important. I learned a lot. It was, we won't talk about that, but so I stayed there for 7 years, and then Hanover Medical School asked me to become chief of nephrology and internal medicine. And then this is a very good medical school in Germany, so we moved from lovely Berlin to Hanover, and there I was responsible first for nephrology. I was then dean of medical education for a while, and then I was running the transplant center, and in between I came to Maine.
And that gets us to today. So you went to MDI a number of times before you joined them full time. What was your first experience like there?
Yeah, it was 1988. I was a postdoc at Yale in endocrinology, and one of my colleagues, my bench neighbors, was working during the summer at MDI Biolab. So we went up there, just a short visit, but it left a mark. And then when I transferred from Berlin to Hanover, I said, I need a break and I need a sabbatical. So I applied, and I went in 1998 for the first time, a full summer, to MDI Biolab. This was when a lot of things started. Some of our staff, they started with me at the same time there. And then I came back every summer since then. In 2004, we started a year-round lab at the Institute. And then we worked there with several people and a successful research group. And I was going back and forth a lot. And then the board asked me in 2018, when we had more difficult times, whether I would consider to take over both jobs, Hanover and MDI Biolab. I did this for 3 years, and then I stepped down in Hanover and moved to MDI Biolab.
Well, it's a pretty bold move to step in and take two jobs at a difficult time.
Yeah, but I mean, don't ask my wife about this, but the MDI Biolab is, you have seen the natural beauty of that, but the spirit of MDI Biolab, I really mean that, is very special. So it was no question when the board asked me to take over the responsibility. I wasn't even thinking a lot about that. I thought you could do this because it was important for MDI Biolab, and this is the way what MDI Biolab does to people.
Mm-hmm. Well, it does seem like a special place, and we're all coming up, so make room for us. So let's talk about the work that happens at the lab, and if you can talk, just give our attendees a flavor of the research.
I think it's important for you to realize MDI Biolab, I was talking about the spirit and I was talking about the natural beauty. For me, as a kidney doctor, it's also one of the most important research places on the planet. Because MDI Biolab, especially in the 60s and 70s and 80s of the last century, was the center and the hub of kidney research. Almost everything we do in kidney has been discovered or designed at MDI Biolab. So for a kidney doctor around the world, MDI Biolab means something which goes far beyond the importance in Maine and what we do in the state. So that's another reason why me as a kidney doctor thought not twice about becoming president of MDI Biolab, because we have a long history of very famous kidney doctors. So I can tell you, I will go to San Diego tomorrow for our national meeting, kidney meeting, 12,000 nephrologists. When I tell them that I'm the successor of Homer Smith, everybody knows what I'm talking about. So this is the basis, and now we have developed, and this was a very bold move, from a summer place where all the famous kidney doctors came for almost 100 years to a year-round lab, and with the same excellence and with the same international impact. So that was a challenge. This started around 2008, and then we sailed into that with junior faculty and still famous visiting scientists. And you can imagine that's a challenge to develop the junior faculty to be honest, our senior faculty like me, we consider these young faculty members our postdocs. So there were some problems, but we have solved that, and now we have both work. We have a wonderful faculty. We have 10 research groups at the moment. We want to grow into 15. And we have still our visiting scientist program. So we are still very much connected to the outside world. We have more than 20 visiting scientists staying for a couple of weeks, but some of them stay for 3 months at the institute during the summer. And in addition, it's very important, we get our students also from international graduate programs. We don't have our own, so we have students from Maine, from Orono, but we also have students from Paris, from Toulouse in France, and from Germany. And at the moment, we have around 32 graduate students on campus. So this is the structure. This gives you an impression of what we do, and we have summer courses, and it's a lively place, even during the winter now. And now, what do we do now? I mean, after kidney. We have the animals, and you have seen some of them, mostly the axolotl, because they're the most cute, but we have zebrafish also, we have African turquoise killifish, we have C. elegans. We cover the non-mammalian animal systems on MDI. And the other half is covered by the Jackson Laboratory. So the JAX is doing mice. So you may not realize this, but in Maine, we have on this relatively small island, one of the centers of the biomedical centers internationally because of the mouse and our animals. And the theme is aging and regeneration. And this is something important because aging, if you develop anti-aging strategies, you also have to think about regeneration. Nobody wants to grow old and degenerate at the same time. So you want to have both. And this is what we are trying to achieve. We work on different organ systems. We work on different mechanisms. So we have aging models like the African turquoise killifish. These are fish, and you can actually see how they grow old. They become a bit more bent and they lose their color, and we can test then mechanisms and new compounds for anti-aging in these animals.
I think in Maine, of course, anti-aging, like it's a perfect combination, right? So
Well, worldwide,
yeah.
I wouldn't consider Maine to be special.
Well, we do. So one of the things that's so exciting about your work is the collaborations that you have throughout Maine. So the research that you do is so important, and the way that you attract graduate students, but you also, to build a life science and ecosystem with economic development, it's really important to work together. I would love for you to talk about some of those collaborations.
Yeah. So two things. First of all, I have a lot of experience, not only in basic research, but clinical studies. I've published and I've carried out large international trials with patients. So I'm sitting on the fence somewhat. I can see both sides, and this is, I think, good for translational research. However, the challenge first was to connect MDI-BL to Maine. Because you can imagine, for 100 years, all these professors were coming from Harvard and from Yale, and they arrived for a summer, and then they left. So the connection between MDI-BL and Maine was not that strong. So that was one of the first challenges, that we build a strong collaboration with the University of Maine, strong collaborations with Portland, so the Roux Institute, it's a wonderful example, but also Maine Health, both the hospital, but also the research institute. We have started, and we'll talk about that, a wonderful collaboration with the Bigelow Lab, and we have students from the colleges. So we have a very strong education program together with Kobe, and this was the first challenge, how to connect in a wonderful way MDI-BL with the other research institutions in Maine.
And the goal really is economic development and having companies spin off from the research and the work that you do to drive our economy here.
Yes, and this is what we are interested in. So we do basic research. That's our focus, and this is what our scientists believe in. However, we then need collaborators, and we need people like Jim Strickland, who joined us a couple of years ago, to identify which of these wonderful, interesting discoveries we are making would be translational, could be translational. And this is very important because normally we don't think this way. I mean, we think about discoveries and some of us think about patenting, but you need people who actually advise you to patent early because you may go out and present your discoveries to the outside world and then no patent. So in order to translate our research, we have to have a structure, and we have provided that. And then we also use our animal models for testing, and I think we'll talk about the Bigelow project in a moment. So we have disease models. I know how to induce kidney failure in the zebrafish, and I know how to give another animal heart failure, and then we can look at the mechanisms, but also can find new compounds to treat that.
Yeah, why don't you go into a little more detail on the Bigelow Labs collaboration, and talk a little bit about like how these come together, because it's so collaborative. But is there any competitive spirit? Like, what are the barriers to these collaborations?
Well, barriers for collaboration, to answer your question, because I think this is very important, there are many. It's all about communication. We have it, you may not think that, we are a small institute, we have 10 research groups. We have a communication problem that our research groups talk to each other, although we meet each other on campus all the time. And it's the same for me. I mean, to go from MDI to Portland takes a couple of hours, but you have to do this. You have to communicate. And as a state, we have to take this seriously. If you don't make the effort to communicate, if you don't make the effort to go there to meet people, these days more easy with Zoom, it doesn't work. You need these collaborations. And to be honest, it's an effort to sit in the car and go down to Bigelow and to ask them. You do it initially, but then you have to keep going, and this is what we have to do in Maine to bring us all together and to make use of the potential we have. Now, talking about the Bigelow project, it started not by accident, but the Bigelow had invited Jim Strickland to give a talk, and he talked about our animal models and how we wanted to use them for screening. And then the wonderful president of Bigelow was in the audience, and she said immediately, well, that's what we need. We have a repository, the largest repository in the world, started in the 70s of the last century, of algae. And to be honest, I didn't know a lot about algae. I know that you can eat them, and they are in my shampoo sometimes, but they extract from these algae, and there is a whole algae world out there with very different species, they extract compounds, and they look at this and look at the structure of these compounds, and they do this together with the Roux and Northeastern. But then we can provide the animal models where you can test these compounds, whether they have an effect on disease. And I've been doing this, my first company was using mice at that time, was built like that. You make a disease model, and then you test novel substances and see whether you can influence the disease. You need expertise for the disease model. You know, they have to be, it's not that easy to induce diabetes in a fish. And it's not that easy then to have diabetic kidney disease in a fish. And how do you measure this? I mean, high blood pressure in the fish, a calf? No, it doesn't work like that. So the methods you need to analyze these disease models, that's what we are very good at. And so it's a partnership you could dream of, you know, that somebody has access to all the algae of the North Atlantic, And then at the same time, only a couple of miles up the road, you have an institution with a world-renowned experience in animal models and disease models, and that's what we're trying to do. And last but not least, I just talked to Ray Winslow about that. When we analyze now our animal models, in the old days, we just looked at them and we made fluorescent markers. Now, these days, we do a whole profiling, molecular profiling of the disease. And here we need help, we need collaboration. We do bioinformatics, but here we need somebody like the Roux Institute where we can work together, because imagine you have a lot of data from the disease model, you have a lot of data from the wild type, from the healthy animal, and you have a lot of data from the drug tests you have done. So to analyze this needs specialists. And we only can do this here with collaboration. And if we do it with all the components, you have just seen that, I mean, it's like cooking. We have all the ingredients, we have to work hard, we have to work on the recipe, but eventually I hope we'll have a cake and can eat it at the same time.
I have this, yes. So, how are you doing attracting chefs, though? Is workforce an issue for you? So we're working to build this life science ecosystem here in Maine, but who are you competing against for talent, and how does Maine play into that? Is it a plus? Is it a minus? Is it a challenge?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, if you want to do what we are doing, to have an excellent international research program, and you want to attract international scientists to Maine, that's a challenge. I mean, first of all, they have to know you, and this means you have to publish on an international level. So the colleagues in South Africa or in Germany, they have to see our publications and they have to realize that we are part of the international community. And we are good with that. But then you have to bring people here, and this means that you have to invite them. And here we have a big advantage because we have a large campus. We have over 30 buildings on campus, cottages, where we can house visiting scientists and our students. So this means that we can invite people. I was talking about the visiting scientist program. And then a spin-off are the students coming to MDI BL, and this is our lifeline. So we have students also from Orono, and then we have to be not only provide them with the spirit of science, but we also have to be successful. You know, when you're a young person, it's not only about having a paid job, it's also about career options. It's also that you're joining a lab with the idea that when you work there, you publish internationally and you can start having a career. And this is, I think, the horizon we have to use, and we are using in the state, that we have to attract people from outside because of the quality of the research and the discoveries we are making. And then to keep them in Maine is relatively easy. I mean, all the students and the scientists we bring to MDI-BL, even during the winter, they are hooked. Some of them may go back, but this is an experience they are not forgetting. And I have lots of fellows. I've trained more than 100 fellows over the last 25 years at MDI-BL, and I can tell you they all dream of coming back eventually sometime to MDI-BL.
Well, what an advantage for you to have that housing on your campus, because we know housing for workforce is just such a challenge for people. So that has to be a huge advantage.
It is, and we, you know, on the island, we are a very special place and not that uncommon for me. During the summer, we are flooded with tourists. I mean, Bar Harbor during the summer, not funny. But then during the winter, it's the other way around. So what do we do? The balance. We need housing. We need basically different housing during the summer than during the winter. So we have regular meetings with all the organizations on the island to develop a plan, because that's what you need first. It's not only that you have to know which housing do you need. Do we need apartments? Do we need individual housing? Do we need the housing for the faculty we want to recruit or for the students, and most likely for both? So yes, we are working on an overall plan, and we have the advantage that for us, for MDI Biolab, we have solved this already, so that's fine. But we are collaborating with the others, with the Jackson Lab, for instance, a huge housing problem on the island.
So the lab is a nonprofit. How much of your time do you spend fundraising?
Well, quite a bit. And for me, this was a very interesting learning curve because you may not be aware, but fundraising in Europe is a very different ballgame. Basically, it's not existent. You know, Europe, we all know this, you pay higher taxes and then the money is distributed by the government. So hopefully you have the right government and they give the money to symphony orchestras and to research labs and not spending on others, but your influence is only indirect. So fundraising is really very small. My former institution, a budget of 1 billion euros and 15,000 people working there, they have one person for fundraising. MDI BL has, Jerry, I won't go into details here, but we have more. So I spend quite... But I spent quite some time with that. I still try to do research with my research group and still writing grants. I find it easier to do fundraising than being successful with grants at the moment, but that's another story. So we spend quite a lot in keeping the lab alive. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for our own research, and I think I've explained this. So this needs a lot of work and needs internal structures and to work with the faculty and to work with the students and to keep the spirit alive. Small things like the dining hall. You know, if you don't have a wonderful dining hall, it's very difficult to keep the spirits high, pipetting and doing interesting experiments. So that's one challenge. Then the connections within Maine, that's a challenge. And then to keep the lab alive. These days, this is not easy. And you may know that a couple of research institute marine biology labs on the East Coast just didn't make it over the last 20 years, and they had to find partners. We're still independent. We're very proud of that. But we have very good support. We have friends who take care of the lab. So this balance of federal funding and fundraising, at the moment, this is going very well, and I'm very optimistic that MDI BL will be around for another 100 years.
So fundraising is a big part of your role. How do you work on dividing your time? Because you want to stay connected to the research, you have these collaborations, you have to do fundraising. Do you ever get to sleep? How do you manage all that?
Yeah, I sleep soundly. What helps a little bit, me going back and forth between the two continents, you know, because when I come back from Europe, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, which allows me to start early. And when I'm in Germany, I work longer hours because I have to catch up with Maine. So yes, I spend a lot of time in front of the computer or fundraising or whatever, and traveling. I still try to be involved in giving lectures internationally, and so I will go to India in January for 3 days, in Malaysia, to talk on my clinical side on microvascular disease, and I consider this also to be important. So yes, it's a good question how to divide my time. It's not easy, and we started with a story with the bike, so this gives you an impression.
We have some great questions that came in from the audience, so I'm going to pivot to those from Jane Stevens. She's a financial planner, and a client's longevity is a major variable in planning for retirement. Do you believe that CRISPR and development of other groundbreaking biomedical technologies will allow people to more commonly live to 110, 130? And how soon will that be a reality? Because that is going to change people's retirement planning.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I mean, first of all, you have to, and I think we mentioned this when I talked about aging and regeneration. The goal is not to be older and older and older and be demented at the age of 92. The goal is to grow older, but in a way that we still can walk, that we can still use our muscle, that our brain activity is still high. So that's the challenge, and that's what we are trying to achieve. So just an example, we have one research project in these African turquoise killifish where we look for skeletal muscle. So we have a swim tunnel where they have to swim against the current. So we make interventions to make them stronger so that their skeletal muscles stay more firm and they can work harder. So this is a goal. So this is what we are concerned with. But you're basically asking a very different question, which is beyond ours. We are discussing this, and this is retirement plan and what happens. And then you ask the question, when? Well, at the moment, you can see that when you follow all the things we already know about physical activity, that we grow older, and we do this all the time. I mean, I'm 20 years ago, retirement age, and I still hope that I'll be around for some time working so we can do this. So it's already happening, but it will be a more gradual and slow increase in aging. So I'm not worried about the retirement plans we have at the moment, but politically, we have to think about this because this is what's happening, and we all know that about retirement and how do you live when you're older and communities. And but as I said, this is beyond our scope. So it will happen. It's not so much, I think, about the technologies. It's about our understanding of the aging process. So I'm a vascular person, I'm a kidney person, but I'm very much interested in blood vessels and in small blood vessels. So the microvascular, which makes up all how we supply our organs. And these blood vessels become less when you age. We understand some of the mechanisms, we produce some of the hormones which are important to keep the blood vessels alive. We have less of these, so we are trying to increase that, and this is where the technology comes in. But I firmly believe that when we can keep the blood vessels up, you all know this, you're as old as your blood vessels are. If we can keep them going, then we can grow older with functioning organs. And our animals, for instance, when we do things like this, interfere with the vasculature, they have stronger bones, stronger muscles, stronger hearts, stronger brains. So these are concepts we're working on.
Do scientists make good business people? I mean, how has that been for you to pivot from, being a doctor, a researcher, a scientist, to running the lab?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question, and a question I've been thinking a lot about. Jim Strickland told you that I have started 4, 5 biotech companies. I'm still not a billionaire, so the answer to your question is no. They are not good business people. However, my first company is still around, 25 years, so that's not too bad for a small biotech company, and they are still making not a lot of profit, but they're alive, and there are a couple of people working there, and the concept is still okay. So in a way, yes. However, I think it's very important, and this is why collaboration is also so important. As a scientist, you make discoveries. You're interested in making these discoveries, and then you are interested in translation, and you're interested in building a company. And the brightest of our scientists, they want to do both at the same time, and that's impossible. So you can make as a scientist a discovery, and you can still be involved in the translational process. But once you form a company, then you have to concentrate on your company 24 hours per day. And you can't think of both things at the same time. That's the mistake I made. I started companies which had all the potential to grow larger, but then you have to make a decision. I didn't make this decision. It was always science first, it was always medicine first, and the company is a little bit on the side. And this is where we need the collaboration. This is where we need incubators. This is where we will, to be honest, I've learned about that. When I first started MDI Biolab, I thought we could do it at MDI Biolab. We can't. If we have made the discovery, if we have a patent, then we have to combine forces with the Roux, for instance, with people who are actually into business. And then we will still have connections and we'll still profit from that. So yes and no. Scientists can be good business people. One of the cardiologists I hired 20 years ago in Hanover, he just sold his company for $1.4 billion to Novo Nordisk. So that's not bad. But he's now a business person and he's not a scientist anymore. He is an administrator and a business person. So you have to make this transition as a scientist at some point. And this is also what we educate young people for. So you have to provide them with an idea. We are, in a way, short-sighted with our educational efforts that we train them to be a scientist or a medical doctor. Not a lot of young people have an idea about what it means to be an entrepreneur. And to be honest, not a lot of young people we train have an idea about the jobs you need in development of a drug. It's not only PR, it's finance departments, I mean, how to write a budget and all that. This is what we are doing together with our partners also. Not only try to make them understand how to pipette and do an interesting experiment, but also that they see the possibilities, especially at a young age, and then we help them to find their way to make their own decisions, what they want to do. And I think we are, on a small scale, successful with that. So we train young people. I'm very open-minded. When they go abroad, that's great, but we have to be so good in Maine that they come back.
So, to that point, what is a hidden secret at the MDI Biolab? One of your favorite things that people don't know?
Well, I hope they all know about this, especially after a meeting like this, but the hidden secret is something which is very hard to define. We call it the spirit of MDI, which is not meant spiritually, but it means that it's a community. So we are facing a lot of questions, you know. How much do you grow actually, and you can still keep this spirit of an institution? Because it's so important for us, because it brings people back. Whom do you hire for that? You know, because we are so small that hiring a new research group has a big impact on how the environment changes. About buildings, you heard me talk about that it's great that we look like what we look like, but you have to have a good balance about modern technology, advanced technology, and the rustical scene of Mount Desert Island. So these are the challenges, and to be honest, we are trying to find our way. At the moment, the concept is 15 research groups, around 10 people per research group, and this makes us internationally competitive, but it's a size where we can still grow talent. We have role models for that. Howard Hughes institutes are about that size. In Germany, it's the Max Planck Institute. So we are not inventing the model. And then we want to connect this tool of science with all the other institutions in Maine. That's at the moment the concept, and hopefully it'll work.
I was sort of thinking like there's a bowling alley in the basement of the dining hall, but I appreciate that. And we saw that in the video too, that you have the beauty of Maine outside, but modern cutting edge technology inside.
Yeah, but but when you ask about, you're asking about infrastructure, and I'm not into bowling alleys, but Jerry, we need sailboats out there, and we have to solve the question about liability for our students when they go sailing in Frenchman's Bay. I need a coffee shop in Salisbury Cove. I mean, that's the little village we are.
Oh, well,
So the
coffee
stu-
by design right here. So,
So
Another
this
collaboration.
this is what we need, and this is part of the development of the island. You all have been, hopefully, to Bar Harbor. You pass Salisbury Cove. You don't even realize that. So our little village, that's nice that we are hidden in a way. PR doesn't agree with that all the time, but we have to develop our small institute within this village, and my dream is to have a science village there. The size I've just described is lots of international visitors, but this has to be within a plan for the island. But as I said, coffee shop and sailboats.
there we go. Coffee shop and sailboats. So, as we near the 9 o'clock hour, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the referendum question and the importance of that to the growth of life sciences in Maine.
Yeah, that's a very good question, a challenging one. I mean, first of all, I think Maine is on the right track. I mean, the spending for biomedical is going up, and it's successful. I mean, it's one of the largest growing industries in the state. So yes, we are still Maine, but people are realizing, the government is realizing and has realized that biomedical is a good investment, and we are on a good trajectory with that. However, we still have to make more bold decisions. So for instance, the money which has been allocated for research is becoming less because of the political process. So it's not dwindling, but it's much less than it was originally proposed. So we should invest more. There are a couple of important decisions about institutions. We just talked about biomedical development. You need patience for that. So the government has to have a good plan together with the hospitals what this means in order to develop structures within Maine where we can do clinical studies. So you have to invest in clinical research centers. You have to invest in CROs. These are the companies which are running these clinical trials. So I think this needs a comprehensive plan, and it will be very well rewarded because this is the way the government has started. So what I'm doing and what we have to do is to make them confident that it'll work. Because I think this is the major challenge at the moment, that everybody thinks, well, eventually it will work, but how and what are the next steps, and is it the right way to spend that? And I think we are on our way. I mean, the governor has realized that MDI Biolab exists. Wasn't the case 10 years ago. We have more federal support. We had Susan Collins on campus, and we have support for renovating our buildings and for the advanced technology. So we are on the right track, and we just have to convince people that this is really the way Maine should develop, and how we can contribute to the wealth of the state.
It's so important from an economic development perspective, and these are good paying jobs too that will grow not just at MDI, but at your partners and then the companies that spin off from it. So as you're getting ready to vote, if you haven't, the referendum question number 2 is a $25 million bond to support innovation in the state that, to your point, was originally 100 million and now it's down to 25, but we'll take 25. We will take 25. Well, thank you, Dr. Haller, for being here. Thank you for the work that you do, and the collaborative spirit is just so critical for the state of Maine. So thank you for
Thank you very
your time.
much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.